Gabby.
Yeah.
Sidney Crosby over the weekend became the Pittsburgh Penguins all-time leader in points, 1,724, knocking Mario Lemieux out of the box. Now, I know for Washington Capitals fans, and Washington Capitals coaches for that matter, he's always been public enemy number one. Before we get to a quick thought on coaching against him, just give me your thoughts on Crosby breaking the record here. He's now the top dog in the history of the Pittsburgh Penguins, a legacy that extends back to 1967.
Well, the number is daunting to me. For a guy that kept track of numbers and stats when I played and after I played, when you think of 1,724, that's such a large number. And I mean, he's done it with so much grace, and he just keeps going. I don't think there's fanciness in Sid. I see the great passes and everything and all of that, but he's like an energizer buddy that just keeps going, and he's got that inner drive that is so amazing. So, to me, there's no doubt in my mind the way he skates, watching the game that he broke the record in, is that he's going to get 2,000 points. I think that's a monumental goal. I think he's going to be able to accomplish that. And, he's got a fire in him that people don't realize, because he looks like the All-American good guy. But, he'll stick you. He'll do everything he can do to win. I hated playing against him, to be quite frank. It was very difficult for anybody in those Pittsburgh days to match lines with them, because they had the perfect combination. And they'd start Crosby, then they'd play Malkin, and then they'd play Stahl. What are you going to do? It was a pretty perfect combination. Then they'd put Malkin and Crosby together, which were dynamic. It's like Draisaitl and McDavid. And then they'd come back with Stahl as the guy. His line would be the checking line, and then they would come back again with Crosby or Malkin on their own line. It was you couldn't match lines with that team in the late 2008 and 9, 10 and beyond.
Yeah, let's get into that a little bit here as we kick off the Hockey Lifers. Thoughts on how you handled that as a coach? Down the middle, as you mentioned, dude, it's a murderer's row, right, for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So as a coach, you're coaching the Washington Capitals. What do you do against that? What's your game plan against that?
Well, for me, it was never simple. There was a lot of thought going into it. But in the end, I said, the hell with it. Every time Sidney goes on, Nick Backstrom's going to go on. And then anytime Malkin would go on, Fedorov would go on. And so that would be the two things that we ended up trying to do. But if they were going to put best on best, and Sidney's going to play 21, 22 minutes a night, I had to put my best. As much as I loved Boyd Gordon, Dave Steckel, and the third and fourth lines, I wasn't going to let them dictate.
Yeah.
Their minutes are supposed to be 11, 12 minutes a night. And if you match lines like that with your checking line, then all of a sudden they're playing way more minutes than not that they're capable of, but then they're supposed to. And then Nick and Alex and Fedorov and Semin, they don't get the ice time that they're needed. And so they're griping on the bench and stuff. So we just said, the hell with it. Best on best. Let's go. Let's see who wins.
One other thing about it, I think a lot of people would be curious about, a little peek behind the curtain here. When you were coaching the Caps and you guys played the Pittsburgh Penguins, was it different for Ovechkin? And did Ovechkin ever say anything to you about Crosby? What was unique about those games, if anything?
Well, you know what? When you ask that right now for the first time, the first thought that comes into my mind is Alex was way more quiet. And when you think about it, he was quiet those days because those were games that he didn't want to be bothered by any outside noise. He didn't want to be the cheerleader. He just wanted to play, and he wanted to beat them. And quite frankly, he wanted to beat Malkin as bad as he wanted to beat Crosby, even though that was the show. Crosby, Ovechkin, Malkin was the one that was drafted number 2 the year after he was drafted number 1. Yeah. And that was something that he really wanted to go at. And boy, those two guys are big men. And when they started hitting each other, they would go after each other with a vengeance. But the competition, if you remember in the HBO thing, there's one scene that Crosby and Ovechkin meet at the bench, and they're like FUing each other, and it's you can just sort of see the intensity in their eyes that this was something, boys. It didn't matter if you're a foot smaller than me and I'm 30 pounds heavier than you. I'm coming after you, so you better beware.
All right, that's getting us warmed up here. Gabby, welcome to the Hockey Lifers, brought to you by PenFed Credit Union. Great rates for everyone. Okay, Gabby, here we go. Once again, welcome to the Hockey Lifers. And you mentioned that HBO thing. That is, of course, HBO 24/7, Road to the Winter Classic 2010. It was destination programming for all of us hockey fans on Wednesday night. Nobody missed that show. It was revolutionary. And today, we're going to air the interview that we did on Sunday with Dan Bylsma, the then head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Lots on HBO 24/7, some more stuff on Sidney Crosby, the rivalry with the Washington Capitals, and yes, we will mention the handshakes or lack thereof. In the meantime,
well, wait a second here. You know what else I want to mention here, and it sort of bugged me at the time that we were doing the interview, but I didn't want to get into it with Dan. But when I mentioned the Steckel hit, and I'm totally convinced it was a complete accident, but the way he reacted, that he thinks it was totally on purpose, and like he's so wrong in that because it was totally an accident. I mean, Dave Steckel never hit anybody through anger or anything in his life. So I just, when we're talking about that, I wanted to mention that.
You know, what I always felt about that situation, too, because let's not forget, at that point, that Winter Classic was supposed to go at 1 o'clock Eastern. It was raining. There was some talk about canceling it or moving it or actually moving it indoors. Like, you know, you were there. There was a whole lot of questions about that game and whether that game was actually going to come off. It got pushed till 8 o'clock Eastern. So it was played in the evening and it was dark. You can talk to all of us about this as an ex-player. I've always been of the mind that players crave familiarity. And when they look up, they have like different sort of landmarks all throughout the ring so they know where they're at. And the superstars, you know it better than anybody else. I looked at that situation. I said, I bet everybody's really uncomfortable on the ice because it's darker where you should normally see light. It's empty where you should see fans, and all your sort of landmarks around the rink are all gone. And we never see Crosby put himself in a situation where even something innocuous as Dave Steckel moving even an inch to the left or the right is going to catch him. I looked at that and said, that's as much a byproduct of the environment as it is about Dave Steckel. Agree, disagree?
Yeah, I agree. It was different, and the players, when they announced that the game was going to be moved to 8 o'clock, I mean, they have to change their whole routine too. So it's a first night game that ever went on. And I mean, if there was stars out, you could have seen them, but I mean, there was so much rain, you couldn't tell. But you know what? Yeah. In the end, I thought it was so much better being at 8 o'clock. My only worry was that the rain was going to freeze. And if the rain had froze, I don't know what kind of effect it would have had on the ice.
Nonetheless, we'll get into all of that with Dan Bylsma coming up here in a couple of moments on the Hockey Lifers. In the meantime, don't look now, but the Metropolitan Division just got a little bit stronger with the return of Jack Hughes to the New Jersey Devils over the weekend. Scored a goal in his return on Sunday, albeit in a loss at the hands of the suddenly surging Buffalo Sabres. Do you have a thought? Sabres have now won 6 games in a row. Jarmo Kekalainen takes over. The streak began while Kevin Adams was still the general manager. Jarmo's making moves mainly off the ice. We'll wait till he makes some moves on the ice. But do you have a thought on a couple of things here in the Eastern Conference? One, the return of Jack Hughes to the Devils. And two, the streaking Buffalo Sabres, Gabby?
Yeah, well, first of all, with the Jack Hughes thing, I'm glad to see him back. He's a very dynamic player. I'm sure he wanted to get back a little earlier just to
Yeah.
show more for the Olympic team, even though he's going to be on it. But he didn't have a good Four Nations thing, so I think he wants to
Yeah.
come back and prove it. But I think he scored so early that the rest of the Devils said, "Oh well, Jack's back. Let's just let him do it." And consequently, that was it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I and so I mean, and the Sabres end up beating them. But the Sabres, it's an interesting story too. Is that what? What do you say? Like, I mean, okay, they've won 3 in a row after Kevin goes. Were they saying, "Hey, listen, boys, we're going to lose our GM if we don't start winning," and then they start winning, they lose their GM anyway? And this is still a byproduct of them now playing good because Lindy's still the coach. They still got the
Mhm.
same assistant coaches. Or has Kakalainen come in and said, "Boys, there's going to be changes here if you don't start playing the way you're supposed to be playing"? Or are they just starting to feel, "Hey, we're pretty good now"? And
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if the change had anything to do with the way they're playing, or it had everything to do with the way they're playing. So but they're right in the hunt right now.
Listen, a couple of people over the weekend, as the Toronto Maple Leafs, and we'll get into them a little bit later on, continue to sputter. Like, we could be looking at a situation here when we talk about the QEW rivalry between Buffalo and Toronto, where the Buffalo Sabres make the playoffs and the high-priced Maple Leafs don't. But I think that the Sabres thing is a combination of, I think, everything that you just said there, Gabby, about Jarmo Kekalainen. There comes a point where you realize, okay, it's going to be over for the general manager, Kevin Adams. We're just waiting. We're just waiting for this to happen, and it finally happens. And you're starting to see changes off the ice. Like, Mark Bergevin comes in as an associate coach. Josh Flynn comes in as an associate general manager. Josh Flynn comes in as an assistant general manager for Columbus. There's other names that are sort of out there in the orbit of Jarmo Kekalainen, whether it's Ville Siren or whether it's Basil McRae, people that have been around Jarmo Kekalainen for a long time that we wonder about too. And I think that resonates with players as well. It's like, okay, this is serious time here now, guys. Like, everything is up for grabs. There's a new general manager who's been around for 8 months. He knows what the score is here. If we don't snap to attention, then there's going to be major changes. And I think with the Buffalo Sabres, Gabby, you look at the Swords and you say, and I've always felt this way, I'm curious what you think, there are so many good things about this team, so many good players on this team, but it's not a team yet. Anthony Stewart, one of my favorite people, and was an NHLer for a long time. Anthony Stewart's father has a great saying about hockey teams. He says, "Here's the question you always ask: are you a team or are you a club?" And we've seen a lot of teams that are, let's say, clubs and go out and play, and this is fun, and we're getting paid. We're in the NHL, it's the best league in the NHL, and it's elite level flights and hotels and meals and all that. But they're not a team; they're a club. And I think right now we're seeing the Buffalo Sabres transition from being a club to being a team. That's the way it feels to me. Does it feel that way to you?
Mm. Well, not yet. I mean, I still think that there's some major pieces that they should move because I think they've been together too long and they accept losing. But that's me. Listen, let's not forget it was less than 5 years ago that Buffalo had a 12-game winning streak in November, December, and still missed the playoffs. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's but I just always thought that they were a really good bunch of players, but not a really good team. Like, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you can put a whole bunch of good players together, but they don't mix as a group. I mean, and that's what I always thought the Buffalo Sabres were all about and then when they would get behind, they would forget everything about the way they're supposed to play and just say, "Let's go get them and see if we can't outscore our problems." But I mean, these last
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 games, they're doing it with defense. Something may have clicked in. Maybe the leadership of Darlene and Tuck and Tage Thompson has finally clicked with these guys, and they're starting to play the way they're supposed to play. But I mean, either way, if I'm a Buffalo Sabre, I'm happy right now. I'm sitting there, boys, let's keep it going. We're as good as
Yeah.
any one of these teams, and we can beat them all if we do the right things. And because I think in the end, players love to win, and winning overcomes everything. So, I mean, it's if you win, you're happy. And that's the way I think they're playing right now. And no, I don't think it was the way they were playing in the past.
As a coach, this is going to resonate with you. It's a lot easier when you get a save, eh, Gabby?
Hey, goalies make great coaches, boy. I mean, make coaches great. Sorry, I'm telling you. Every time I've had a really star goalie, it seems we've won the cup. And when you don't have good goalies, nothing happens.
Alain Vigneault, when he coached the New York Rangers, had the best saying. He would say, guys, hockey is really simple. Hockey is really easy. It goes like this. If my goalie is better than your goalie, I win. But if your goalie is better than my goalie, you win. And I think it was Ned Harkness back in the 70s who said something along the lines of, we should rename the sport from hockey to goalie, because really that's what it's all about. Let's just stop calling this hockey and just start calling it goalie. And good on the Buffalo Sabres. They are getting saves. Quick thought on the Maple Leafs as well here. So tough one against the Washington Capitals last week. Washington just had their way with Toronto. Tough one against Nashville on Saturday. Leafs played a good period, and then Nashville walked away with it. Tough one against Dallas on Sunday with a better effort from the team in blue, but still the same results. And the question marks are swirling around the coaching, around the players, around the general manager, maybe even around the mascot. I don't know how deep it goes, Gabby, but it doesn't feel good for the Toronto Maple Leafs right now. Your thoughts?
It's Toronto. And it's, I mean, listen, they got on Mitch Marner for a couple of years. They got rid of Mitch Marner. They wish they had Mitch Marner back. So now they've got a new guy to pick on. It's whether it's Austin Matthews or Craig Berube, they're picking on him, and it gets louder and louder. There's an awful lot of media in Toronto, and it just keeps getting louder. Let's look at it. They've also run into a perfect storm of bad stuff. When they played Washington was coming off 2 5-1 losses, and they were mad, and they're playing Washington at home, and Leafs just didn't meet their push. They weren't very good. The Nashville game, Nashville's playing a lot better now. They're not the doormat that they were a month and a half ago. So it was a good game till the third period, and I thought playing Dallas and Toronto had beaten Dallas 12 times in a row or something, and
it was ridiculous.
Dallas was is as good a team as any in the league. I mean, the next game to me is the game that says everything. They're playing Pittsburgh on Tuesday, and Pittsburgh just came off losing 8 in a row, and Toronto, losing 3 in a row here. That's going to be the game. I think that if Pittsburgh comes out and beats them 5-1, all of a sudden the break is not going to be fun for an awful lot of people in Toronto. If Toronto comes back and wins and said, well, they got better after each game, even though they didn't get the points, and here we go. So I mean, Toronto's a never-ending soap opera. It's something that your stars better perform. I was really sort of shocked yesterday when you're watching the game, and it dawns on you when they say Matthews has 14 goals and Nylander has 11. Those are their 2 best players. Boy, normally they're way up there in both of those arenas. Like, I mean, Matthews and Nylander are one of the better scorers in the league, and they're just not doing it right now. So it's everybody's questioning everything in Toronto.
That's a lot on one game, Gabby. That's a lot on one game against the Pittsburgh Penguins.
I'm telling you, that's what it's going to come down to. I bet my bottom dollar. If Pittsburgh won 5-1, all hell's breaking loose in Toronto over the break. If Toronto
Merry Christmas.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. Okay, speaking of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Dan Bylsma. Gabby, you coached him, you coached against him, and you starred against him in the groundbreaking 2010 series HBO 24/7 Road to the Winter Classic. We had a chance to sit down with Bylsma yesterday morning to talk about this outstanding series, one of the best that's ever been produced around the NHL. Here's our conversation with Dan. First of all, Dan, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Hockey Lifers. I want to get to, and so does Bruce, the HBO 24/7 series, Road to the Winter Classic, Penguins Capitals, which revolutionized in a lot of ways how these behind-the-scenes documentaries are done. But before we get there, and before I turn the recreation over to Bruce coached you for a couple of games. How was Gabby as your coach?
To be honest, the situation was a total blur. And I only have like a few snapshots, images of that particular 2-game segment. I was, story goes, I was playing for the Phoenix Roadrunners. I believe the LA Kings had a loose affiliation with both Phoenix in the IHL and Lowell in the American Hockey League. And on a Saturday morning, I got a call. We were in Chicago, and I got a call from Dave Taylor saying there's some injuries. Lowell needs some players. Would you go play in Lowell for Saturday and Sunday? So I hopped on a plane. I arrived in Lowell just prior to game time. Walked into the room. That's when I remember meeting Bruce at that particular second. It wasn't a foreign face to me. He was in the LA organization. I had seen him before, but and I played 2 games in Lowell there, and I do remember that Bruce played me. I just
Well, you forgot to mention beautiful Lowell, beautiful downtown Lowell. There's nothing better. But yeah, it was 2 games. You know what? You're saying that, and I always thought to this moment that you were injured in LA, and you had, they asked you to go down for like the 2 or 3 games before you came back to LA. That's what.
Yeah, that's part of this story. I that summer I broke a foot in training and on ice, and delayed the start of training camp for me. I didn't get going until like the middle of October. And so, yes, I had gone down to, might have been Long Beach, not Phoenix. Gosh, if I read it was Long Beach. And so I was down there kind of getting my feet underneath me and getting back to playing. And that was the case. I was somewhat recovering from injury.
I will tell you this. I thought you were an NHLer then. And my report to Dave, what I remember here, and I do remember this. I know you got a goal and assist, but that wasn't important to me. What was important is I'm saying when I told Dave and Bill O'Flaherty, I says he's out there blocking shots, and which was one of your things, that you did really well. And I'm saying here's a guy coming down for 2 games. And he's blocking shots, and he doesn't have to do that because he's going right back up. And so that's the thing that impressed me at the time. So, I mean, I knew I was never going to see you again, but unless you were on the opposing bench, which then I hated you. So everything was okay then.
Well, we saw a lot of each other on the opposing bench side.
Yeah. Yes, that's for sure.
Well, let's get there then. And, HBO 24/7, with the NHL Winter Classic on the horizon here, thought it'd be a lot of fun to get 2 of the stars of a revolutionary program together. Now, that Road to the Winter Classic series in 2010, I mean, that one changed the perception of a lot of people. Everyone got a sort of a peek behind the scenes and got a chance to see, what Matt Hendricks was like and Ben Lovejoy was like. Here's a different side of Sidney Crosby. Here's a different side of all these players. And coming out of it, the 2 coaches were stars. Gabby and I have talked a lot about what that meant for him and his profile. Dan, what did it do for you? Like coming out of HBO 24/7, what did that do for you?
Well, I think, looking back on it, I can't tell you how many times people, even to this day, talk about some of the scenes of 24/7 and, in the dressing room, getting to see Gabby and myself be coaches in front of the room. And I think, that I laugh at. I mean, there's a couple quotes that people say to me from a few of those pregame speeches and a few of those, but they were they just I think they got to show what kind of coaches and how the coaches interact with their team. And that was big for both my career and I think Gabby as well.
Yeah, you know what? I think the biggest thing, I don't know if it's the biggest thing, but one of the things George McPhee said is they've got full access, and we want you to give full access to them and to everything they say and do, and don't hold it back. And I think like our both teams did a great job at that. Like the next year, I think it was in Michigan, and Carlisle and Babcock wouldn't give them any access, and I think that's why it ended. But we were told to give them full access, and they came to your home, to my home. I mean, they were like, I mean, as soon as you got to the rink, they were putting on microphones, and thank God, I think they really knew what they were doing, because I think they just did the Jets, the Hard Knocks the year before or something, and they were really good at what they allowed to be printed and what they didn't allow, and I thought that's what made it pretty special.
Yeah, they did an awesome job. I mean, and I think initially when George McPhee and Ray Shero came to us and said, "Hey, the full access," and it was scary. I'm not sure the players and myself felt like, "Oh boy, this is going to be," they're going to be hiding around the corner. They're going to get a cheap shot of you saying this or doing that. But they did a great job of immediately becoming part of the team, and I thought they did a great job of Ray Shero always said this: it gave every person in the game and out of the game access to a spot that they had never seen before. And, Ray Shero said it, and he's like, "I'd never seen you in the dressing room before." It was a good chance for me to see you in the dressing room with the team. We got to see the refs in between periods. There was the access to the game was unprecedented. And it gave everyone, including the GMs, the coaches, the players, it gave them access to the game in a way that had never happened before.
Did you guys get a chance to see each episode before it came out? Because, to Gabby's point, if I'm you two guys, look, the microphones are on when you guys are in the coach's office talking about players. And that is, as we all know, that's like gloves off. Everyone's got to have it on the table. There's no Mr. Nice Guy in those situations. Did you guys get to see this before it went to air, or every Wednesday were you sort of crossing your fingers and saying, "I really hope they didn't capture me burying these guys or that guy or saying this about that player"? Did you see it before at all, Dan?
I remember the first one, and I remember it was post game, and it was airing, and we were basically the whole team. We were in the lounge area, and the whole team gathered around to kind of see the first episode, to see what was going to come on, what they were going to say, and what it was going to look like. So there was a little bit of that not knowing, and I think as we went along, certainly there were storylines that they were following and they were making points of, and we kind of, at least for us, Bruce, it was like there was, once it got to the editor's room, it was kind of, maybe we had one red ink pencil that we could do. I mean, us meaning the Pittsburgh Penguins, but once it got to the editing room, it was kind of out of our hands. There was chances, like we had a meeting in Washington, I remember, and it was a pregame meeting in the morning time. And Tony Granato was the coach in front of the room, and he went through his meeting and he said some things, and I'm in the back of the room. I'm like, and I'm standing next to the editor, I guess, was with us there, and I'm like, that's got to be cut. Like he can't, that can't be said. And he was good about not putting exactly, the full version of what Tony had gone through in that meeting. So there was a little bit of that prior to getting to the editor's room by the end of the week or the month.
Well, that's a little bit different than it was. You know what I said? I've only seen the parts that are famous on the speech. I haven't even watched it yet. The thing I couldn't but I did know that. I mean, when you're talking, we were losing one game, and in between periods, I was just giving it to Ovi. I mean, not to him personally, to the coaches, and then forgetting that they are allowed to print what they wanted to print or say what they wanted to say. And I'm so happy that they had the common I wouldn't say common sense, but they knew, hey, we can't put that
Yeah.
in. And because I mean, I would remember the next day, I'd go, "Oh my God!" Like I mean, if he gets still a wind of this, I'm done. And I do know the one after the speech that with the F bombs, I went the next morning and I asked our team services guy. He says, "Hey, like on that HBO thing, like, and they came in the room. Did they? Are they going to bleep out, what I was saying? Because, and they said, I don't know if they caught me with all these F bombs. And they said, oh, they caught it. They caught it all right. And you'll be hearing it pretty soon. So, I mean, like, I was pretty, like, numb to all of it after a while and just go with it, whatever they want to do. But to me, it worked out perfectly because you guys started out on a great, like, I think you were on an 8 or 10 game win streak and we were on an 8 or 10 game losing streak. And so it was a really good, the storytelling just went perfect in it, I think, for TV.
I mean, I agree. Obviously, I'd rather have been on the 8 game or 9 game win streak, but and the end, the emotion of us not winning in the Winter Classic game, that's probably how you'd write the story if you're going to look back and make it great TV for everybody.
I'm curious, Dan, what did the players on the Penguins side think of the entire series? Like there was a couple of favorites for me from the whole thing that gave us, different looks, like Matt Hendricks's eye. Like I'll never forget that visual in my life. I'll never forget Ben Lovejoy's face after getting the shot. I'll never forget seeing Mike Green on a Vespa. Like it just like humanized and personalized, and like you fell in love with these players off the ice. What did they think of it?
I think again, when it's all started, there was some hesitation from exactly the exposure that was going to happen, both for the team and for the individual players. I thought, they did an awesome job. I can't reiterate it enough how good of a job HBO did. The people that came in, a total of 8 people were, 2 different camera crews. So you have your camera and your boom and your editor, I guess, or your director or whatever. So, but they did an awesome job of becoming part of our team so well. And once the first one showed, the players kind of got at ease with the fact that they weren't trying to catch you with your pants down, so to speak. They weren't going to try to paint you in a bad light. I thought, what both Washington and Pittsburgh is, they caught us as ourselves. And the players, I think, truly enjoyed that aspect of it. Ben Lovejoy, became I don't want to say a hero, but people still talk to me today about the Ben Lovejoy scene in the plane when Sidney Crosby looks at him and his face is blown up, and he said, "Ben, you all right, brother?" But
you have to know Ben too, right? Like we both had him. Like I mean, he's a little bit of a different duck sometimes, and Ben would answer the like he'd be so serious about everything all the time. Yeah,
absolutely.
The Lovejoy, I mean, that's the one that everybody remembers. The one that always sticks with me on Ben Lovejoy, and by the way, guys, I just loved it. Every Wednesday, I couldn't wait till this thing came out. Every week, it was appointment television. But the scene where the veterans take all the dresser and the bed out of the hotel and in Ben Lovejoy's room and stick it in the hallway, and they ask Ben what he's going to do, and the line is so perfect for a kid. He says, "I'm going to find out who did this and not do anything about it." Was like honestly, because it's the perfect snapshot into like, this is this guy's place on the team. The veterans did this, so he's not going to do anything. Actually, he's going to do 2 things. He's going to do nothing and like it. That's what Ben loved. And it was like that slice into the personality. But you really got a sense out of this series, Dan and Bruce, how the pecking order worked, how everybody interacted, what the various protocols were, how everybody got together. And like, did you guys get it? Because you guys live in this. But did you guys get a sense of, this is finally us showing the hockey world how it all comes together and what the dynamics are? Like, I guess what I'm asking is, how much did you just take for granted and think like, oh, I thought everybody knew that? but we didn't. And that's what made the show so great.
Well, for me, like I was oblivious to everything. I mean, and Dan will probably be the same. You go to work, and once they put the microphone on you, once you got comfortable with that, you go to work. You don't think about anything. You're just going about your business. I mean, I tell you, wanted to ask Dan this on that same type of thing during the game. Like it was raining so hard, and I thought it was just dripping. I mean, that was the first time I realized how intense that coaches are because I didn't notice the rain until I got off after the game and realized I was soaked to the skin. Like, did you have any feeling like that? And then when you saw it on TV, realizing how much rain was coming down that night?
Well, the one thing I remember about, I think it was in the second period, and we were behind in the game. I think we tied it in the second period. And we were in the neutral zone, and we passed the puck, and there was a rooster tail behind the puck.
Yeah.
The water's spewing up across the puck. And I am like, when I think it was Evgeny Malkin scored the goal, I was like, maybe there's a chance it's 1-1 that we could stop this game and we can end this thing in a tie and be all right with it. Cause it wasn't so much the rain that I remember as much the water on the ice and the puck just, again, the rooster tail, you don't see that very often. The conditions were challenging, so to speak. Yes. In that game. I think it added to the drama of the whole thing.
Yeah, there was a lot of different parts from the drama, from the Steckel pretended hit to
Bruce.
Oh,
Bruce.
to the win, to the shaking hands, all that. Like it's amazing how all that stuff became like almost folklore. You can talk to people and there's certain individualistic things that just step out into that game.
Yeah, the interesting part of Steckel, my family, my in-laws happened to sit at I think it was a Cubs game, and the Steckles sat in front of them, and they got to I don't know how they got to the knowing that was my family and Dave Steckel, but they were adamantly apologizing that Dave had no intent on that play, and it was just. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it for what it is.
It was his only hit in 10 years. Like, I coached him for about 7 of them. So, oh well, that's water under the bridge.
Yes,
Sid's
it is
doing okay right now.
I agree with that. Sid's doing amazing.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other moments in that, while we're talking about the game itself, as we all know, was scheduled to go at 1. It didn't end up. Getting off until 8:00 that night. But the Mike Rupp fight with John Erskine, you always wonder, like, okay, is anyone going to throw down in these things? And that was like big boy fights. I'm curious from a coaching point of view, and Gabby, we'll get to you. I want to get Dan's thoughts on this one here initially. When you saw Rupp as the F1 on that, and he goes right in, and then him and Erskine throw down, what went through your mind? Those are two big boys.
Bruce, what'd you think?
Oh, with me, I thought it was wow. I mean, like, they're two big boys, and that's it. And they were, and like, if you've ever seen John Erskine in a fight, there's no defense. It's just like he winds up and it's whoosh. You can hear the wind. And Mike, I got to know him more at the NHL Network, and I can't believe how big he is. So, I mean, the whole idea of that fight was crazy. But it tells you that, there's two teams. There was a lot of dislike for each other, and and this wasn't a fun game to just, hey, let's go out there. It's a Winter Classic, and let's have some fun. There was two teams that really didn't like each other, and that was the proof right there. Because not too often are you going to get fights in the weather that we had and everything else that went on that day.
I couldn't have said it better, Bruce. I think it wasn't a show game. It wasn't for charity. It wasn't for charity or whatnot. And I think the players. I think the players all wanted to like, it's not a Stanley Cup final game, but they treated it as such. And, Mike Rupp, made the choice. I don't know if Mike Rupp made the choice or Eriksson made the choice, but, they were it was all out there. It was all out there, and we've seen Mike do it again in his other Winter Classic games that he scored a goal, did the salute. It's the guys wanted to put on a show, not a show for hockey, but a show against a rivalry of which we really didn't, care too much for each other.
No, not at that time.
No.
How much of that, because we always, wonder how much, there was, Sid and Ovi, a lot of it was sort of based around, and, those two players, coming out of the lockout in 2005 and the NHL hitching its marketing wagon to those two players and these two teams. From a fan's point of view, just people that are, watching it from the other side of the glass, you really want this to be like full of animosity, player to player, just not getting along. What was it like, Dan, facing off against the Washington Capitals? Bruce, I want your thoughts on this one against the Penguins, but how much, legit animosity was between the two teams, players, organizations, all of it?
I don't want to put too much on it, but there wasn't a lot of light between the two teams. I've faced Gabby in Hershey and Wilkes-Barre, PA for 3 years or so, and bitter rivals. They were really good. We were trying to be really good. When I got to Pittsburgh, they were a better team at the time when I got to Pittsburgh, and they were our bitter rivalries, as was Ovi and Sid. They were the two marquee players. There was, I'm not going to say it's between those two guys, but we certainly tried to make the animosity as between those two players, and they've had some, repeated run-ins over and over and over again, and Bruce said it. There was not a lot of love loss. We weren't kumbayan after games and wins and losses. No, sir.
Well, you could tell it was the only game, and I'm not saying anything negative about Pittsburgh, but we didn't like each other so much that nobody wanted to shake hands. We didn't want to shake hands after the game, but we would be. Because we won. So, your chest is out a little bit more. But for 6.5 games in the playoffs that year, there was absolute hate. If we could have killed them, we would have. If they could have killed us, we wouldn't. We didn't care if anybody got hurt on their side. We wanted to win. Now, eventually, you guys won. You won the cup, and it was great. But Dan said it. There was no love lost at all. I don't think anybody in our room ever had a good thing to say about Pittsburgh, but it was out of respect, not out of anything else. And I remember Ted Leonsis coming in the room after maybe one regular season game when I had just got there, and he said, "Listen, Pittsburgh has beaten us in every playoff, in everything." And this was in the regular season. He says, "I hate Pittsburgh. I don't care if you win any games, but if you don't beat Pittsburgh, then we have a problem." So that's when I knew that there was a lot of dislike amongst the two teams.
Absolutely, it's no lie. I can. There's a lot of emotion into it. Me personally, but I would say our team too. Back in those days, I think it was the MCI Center. But they rocked the red, and you go in that building and third period, and they were rocking the red, and Ovi scoring hat tricks, and it was it was emotional for everybody.
It was big boy hockey when we played Pittsburgh. That's the one thing I know. There was no, you didn't see guys hanging around in the hall waiting for the other guy to talk to him after the game, or you didn't see the guys kneeling down at the red line saying, "Hey, how you doing, Max? What's going on? Yeah, talk to you, have a beer after the game." That when Pittsburgh and Washington were playing, there was none of that.
Amen.
One of the best rivalries in the NHL at that time. Okay, Dan, before we let you go, we just got a couple more moments left with you, and we thank you for your time. Favorite memory from that series, and from the HBO 24/7 series, and when's the last time you watched it? Have you gone back at all to watching of it, whether it's just clips online. You mentioned people will remind you about part of that Gabby speech he still gets reminded about all the time. But like, when's the last time you actually went back and watched this thing? And what are your favorite memories from it?
I think, clips of it for sure have, and I'm not necessarily me going back and watching, but, uh, in my golfing group this summer, we have a guy who repeatedly plays the clip where I'm in the room before the game and I say, grind those just down. And, he played it all summer long. So I saw it a bunch. I helped coach a team in Ludington, Michigan this fall. I'm not currently there right now, but a U12 team. And some of the players on that team were quoting some of those things that happen in 24/7. So it still comes back a lot. I get a lot of people talking about it. My favorite, I just think the showing of the game and the emotion of the game, both good and bad, is what I liked about there's so many scenes that bring a smile to my face. I think you got to see the players as themselves. And one of the things I said to the team, it's like, there's no acting here. We're just going to be ourselves. And so, Marc-Andre Fleury, I think I'm not revealing anything here. He put all that furniture in the hallway in Buffalo. I believe that was Mark Testu and Ben Lovejoy. That happened that didn't happen one time, and that happened, it happened a lot. But we know that now because Mark's famous for his pranks by now. That's just one of the many. But you got to see the players as themselves. You got to see the game as it is. It's a great game. It's great people in the game, and that's what I remember, and that's what I like about
it. Hey, you're talking about your golf buddies repeating stuff. I get it. We've got the same group of golf buddies type of things. And every Saturday morning when we're playing, every time I three putt, every single time, there's one guy in the group says, and so shit ain't going right. Just to bring me and you can't get away from it. So it's amazing how many people have seen that and sort of taken words, whether it was for Dan or for myself, out of that. That proves people watched it.
They did, and they loved it. And this has been a delight catching up with you. But before I let you go, I do, because you mentioned officials a couple of seconds ago. Let me close on this. The one thing that we never see, we hear it every now and then in clips, but we never see officials, in the room having a beer, just like everybody else, or the officials with the conversations with the players as well. Like, this is not, you guys both played, so it might not feel like a unique thing for both of you, but for someone who just grew up a hockey fan, or someone's a new fan, that is a really unique piece. And in a lot of ways, people tend to look at referees and linesmen as if they're robots. It kind of humanized them. Like, Crosby got humanized, the peanut butter sandwich every single day at the same time before games or whatever it was. Like, it humanizes them. But the one thing, Dan, that I thought, we'll close on this, that this show really gave a nice peek to, is making officials humans as well.
I said, I enjoyed the in-between locker room, in the referee's locker room in that game. I think that was the Toronto game. Because it did humanize them. They did talk about the mistake they made, or the potential why they made the call and what was going on in the game. And I think that looking back on the game, the officials are just as much a part of the game as the players are. And Bruce and I have relationships with the referees over many, many years. And, you talk with them on the ice, you talk with them off the ice. They're real people. And they have, they're as much part of the game for me as the players are. And I think it showed in 24/7, especially with that clip in the Toronto game for us.
Yeah, and like good friends, the relationships are good and bad. I mean, there's some that I'm sure, Dan, oh, geez, we got this guy again. I don't know what I'm going to do. I know I did that a lot. The players, the other coaches didn't want to show me the lineup sometimes when we had a certain referee because they didn't want me to get going too early. But they are human. I happen to live next door to Paul Dvorsky, so I mean, I got to know it pretty well. So and we would often in the summer talk over a beer, and I would learn, like, I mean, what they're thinking an awful lot of the time. And boy, they know the game well. I mean, and they want everything to be perfect. A great game for them is a perfect game, like where there's nobody's arguing, everything's cut and dry. But it's boy, they got a tough job. Yeah.
Oh, they got a terrible job. I mean, and every call they make, 50% of the people on the ice aren't going to like it. Mm-hmm. You know, they're never happy. No one's ever happy. So either Bruce is upset or I'm upset about the call they made or what's going on in the game. And so they got a miserable job. And I think they do for the most part, obviously we're always going to be upset about a call here and there, but I think they do a wonderful job for our game.
Absolutely.
From a coaching point of view, Dan, how do you know where the line is? Where you're like, okay, I can bark, but now I gotta stop.
I think it's individual for every referee and maybe every coach with a certain referee. There, just like Bruce, there were referees where I put on the top of my card, like reminder, do not talk to him. Like, just do not talk to this guy. Mm. And so I would, go into the game, like, just not saying anything. Where, other referees, that you had a relationship with or, relationship as an experience with, you might, like Wes McCauley, you just might yell at him to start the game, just to say hello. He was that type of referees where sometimes it was like, I cannot talk to this guy at all. And different times for different teams. I went into Pittsburgh and I made a point of, and I was a first time coach, so you got no respect from the referees. They want to show you a thing or two. So I made a point of not talking, basically not talking at all to the referee, or not making a scene with the referee at all going in there. So I think it's different situations, different referees as well.
And it was a good move too. I wish I had known that.
Listen, Dan, we've kept you long. We appreciate it. Enjoy the holidays. Best to you and your family, and all the best and success in 2026. We really appreciate this.
And last thing, Dan. Thing, get back in the game. Game needs you.
Yes.
Good man, good coach. And it's always okay to take a little bit of time off, but the good guys got to get back there. So good luck, and hope you're back on the bench next year.
Thanks, Bruce. Appreciate it. Happy holidays, guys.
Okay, that's Dan Bylsma, former head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins and one of the stars of HBO's 24/7 Road to the Winter Classic going back to 2010. We thank Dan for his time and his candor as well. Now, I'm going to feel like Bob Barker from The Price is Right here, Gabby. Okay. Without going over contestant Boudreau, how many F-bombs do you think you had in that famous speech?
Well, I'm going to tell you. I don't know the exact number, but here's the thing that's funny about this. I used to do the Roger Nielsen Coaches Clinic every year.
Yeah.
Okay, which was in Windsor. And I'm answering it this way, but I will get to the answer. Jim Ralph used to be the MC. Okay, and we all know how the Leaf broadcaster, how funny he is. He's amazing. Every time I would come on to do the talk, he would show the video of the whole speech, and it's 42 seconds long or something like that. Yeah. And he would have a number, a clicker in the corner of how many F-bombs were going on. And I may be wrong, but the number 14 comes to mind.
But you did not go over. You did not go over. You nailed it. It is 14 F-bombs.
That's what it was. That's what I thought.
F-bombs.
14 F-bombs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so
the reason Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, like in hockey stats now, everything's about like per 60. That was probably the most F-bombs per 60 we've ever seen a coach in the NHL. Although maybe John Brophy would have given you a run for your money. But as far as we're concerned, that's got to be the record per 60 for NHL
John
coaches.
Brophy would have broke that record in church. Just to let you know. but let me throw this at you. The reason I asked earlier, we played Florida. That game was on a Tuesday. So Wednesday morning, I knew I had said that because I'd asked these guys to leave the room, and they said no. And because of the access, I said, okay, here goes. And so Wednesday morning, the first guy I met was our team services guy. And I said, did you guys see the video that's going to happen tonight? And they said, yes. And I said, did I use any bad language in it? And
you didn't know?
Yeah. No, well, I didn't know what they were showing. I didn't know what was cutting and everything. And they just looked at, there's two of them, and they just looked at each other and they go, yes, it was, you used some F-bombs. I said, oh, okay.
Just a little bit of salt on the tongue there.
Yeah, there was,
Gabby.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just a little salty. Listen, let me just a quick follow up, and then we'll move along. And I asked Dan this, and you and I have sort of hinted at this a couple of different times, and what that series did, not just for hockey, but all the people individually as well. Like, you had like a new layer of depth to all the players, whether they're superstars like Ovechkin. You know, there's that great scene of him taking the run at Girardi and then fighting Dubinsky, and it's all caught on mic, and it's awesome. Then I mentioned, Mike Green on the Vespa, like all this. Matt Hendricks's eye. I will never forget the sight of Matt Hendricks's eye in that one tight shot they did of him. Holy smokes! Did a lot for Crosby, did a lot of Pascal Dupuis and Ben Lovejoy, et cetera, et cetera. You talked about this with Dan, but like you mentioned that still to this day, people will quote back elements of that speech to you. But outside of the speech itself, what do you think that HBO 24/7 series did for you? Because Gabby, from my corner of media here and talking to fans, like that made you a superstar, in my opinion. And I think in a lot of people's opinions as well. You became, like, everybody knew Bruce Boudreau after that one. Everybody did. Well,
just the testament of how many people watched it. But you know what? I never, ever think of that. Like, I mean, I get, let's say once a week, a call about that, to be honest. Yeah. Like if I'm doing cameos, they always want me to say, they always say, hey, do the HBO speech to my friend Jim. And I'm going, I didn't realize it had become so well known, but everybody does know it. Like, I just did a talk in Dallas about 6 months ago, and that's how they started it out with the HBO special speech. So I am like, hey, I'm very grateful that I was able to be part of it, and that it keeps my name out there, but I had no idea that it was going to be this popular.
You did it on TSN. I think it was Trade Deadline. You redid the entire speech for the crew.
Well, that's what they said. They wanted me to do that thing. And you know what? Listen, if you ever go back, anybody that's watching this podcast goes back and look at that TSN Trade Line speech. It was one take, and they just said, go with it. And I started ad-libbing the whole thing. So I ad-libbed the whole thing, and I'm just looking at everything. And then I saw Gino Reda. I still laugh every time I see Gino, and I go, and you don't even have a chair. Like, I mean, it was, if people watch this, you should go back and just Google that, because I thought it was a pretty funny moment.
I thought it was outstanding, Gabby. Everything about it and everything around it. That is one that will live in infamy. All right, Gabby, let's get to a quick Hey Gabby question here. For your chance to ask Gabby a question, use the hashtag Hey Gabby. Marco Esquandolas sends us this one. For you, Gabby. Favorite Pat Maroon story when he was in Anaheim, and when did you figure out Pat was going to make the team in Anaheim?
It's a good question. It was in the lockout year, and I had always looked at the Syracuse stats. I don't want to make this too long, but I mean, and he was like fourth in the league in scoring and second or third in penalty minutes. And I'm going,
Yeah.
man, that's the kind of guy you like, a guy that can score and can fight. And so I remember Bob Murray saying, "Well, he can't be here. He's not a good enough skater. We can't keep him on." So we sent him down, and then the first chance I got, I brought him back up, and he went right on the line with Getzlaf and Perry, and it was perfect because he could protect the guys, but he was big and strong, and all three of them were so good from the circles down. We controlled the game every time they were on the ice. But the best story was the scariest story with Patrick. Bob Murray asked me one day, he says, "You got to sit out Patty." And I go, "What?" He says, "You got to sit out Patrick Maroon tonight." And I said, "Why?" And it was something that he's doing well. We got to, keep him under wraps. His contract is up this year. That was his philosophy. And I said, okay, I don't like doing this. And so I pulled Patrick, and I had to do it about 4 times with Bob. And so it was a pain in the ass. But I mean, at the same time, the repercussions if I don't do what he wants to do and he's adamant about it were probably worse than what would have happened. So I pulled Patrick aside and told him, and I had no reason to do it. And he's going, "Why? And I'm going, well, we're going with a faster skating group today. And, we just think you're a little, this group is faster." And it was so much bullshit that and I almost couldn't do it with a straight face, but he was getting madder and madder at me. And I thought he was going to take a punch at me, but we made up soon thereafter. And I think we've been pretty tight ever since, to the point, like when he was playing for Edmonton and I was in Minnesota, he would skate by and warm up and he'd mouth the words trade for me. And which I thought that was really cool that he still liked me. But I mean, I hated saying those things to Pat because he's a great teammate. And you know what? We do the NHL Network and we've done it together. And I've told him these stories too, and sort of apologize. He said, "I know, I was told it wasn't you," and we've moved on.
Okay, there was one thing that your Ducks used to do, and it's funny too. I used to always see it against the Oilers, and it was when Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was really young. So when your Ducks would be playing, have a face-off in the offensive zone, and you had your top line out there, Getzlaf, Perry, and the subject
Maroon
of the subject of this discussion, but Pat Maroon specifically. And I don't know if you always did it with Maroon, but it seemed like you always did. In the offensive zone, there would be face-offs where Getzlaf would deliberately lose the draw. Perry and Maroon would charge the defenseman, force a turnover, get the puck up high to Getzlaf or Perry, who had slid back, and it would be an instant scoring chance. Was that a set play by you? Was that Ryan Getzlaf just freestyling? Here's what we're doing on this one, boys. I would see it too much with your Ducks to think that it was just something frivolous. Like this was a set play.
It's great that you recognize that, because it's a set play that I had, and actually he didn't lose the draw. Getzlaf would go forward with it, okay? And it was usually on his left side, and he would go forward with it. And Pat, he knew we were going to lose the draw, so he'd get the jump on the defenseman, and he would go right into the corner, and Corey Perry would go to the right of the net, the other side. And so all Pat would do is get it and slap it to Perry. And after Getzlaf did the draw, he would move over to the right side of the slot, and Perry would get it, and he would just throw it out to Getzy, who was very rarely covered in that spot. But it was a set play. We had all kinds of set plays like that. I was really big on offensive plays. We'd go over face-offs every game, but offensive plays and defensive plays. So it was something I took a lot of pride in.
How many face-off plays do you have?
I'll bet you there's 8 to 10 that you can do off the top of my head. that being one of them, where the defensemen are moving up and back. And yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. You know, the whole idea is you got to, if you win the draw, you have to make the other team think. And if you can have some movement and everything else, you usually got a chance to score. And these are all, and I think the fact that I was a center my whole life really come into that, because I used to try to think of these things outside the box when I was playing.
That's awesome. Okay, we'll wrap up as we normally do here with story time with Gabby. And this is an interesting one. There's a visual component to this. So if you're listening to this podcast, you might want to hop over to the YouTube side of things for this visual. I was sent this from a scout in Western Canada who said, I just found this online. I don't know if you can use it for your podcast with Gabby or not, but it might be a lot of fun. So it is a game sheet from 1990, all right? An exhibition game, your Fort Wayne Comets, where you were Reg Dunlop, player coach or assistant coach. Al Sims was the head coach. Fort Wayne Comets facing off against the Kalamazoo Wings. I'm going to surrender the floor to you. Who do you want to talk about here? Or do you want to talk about the team? Or do you just want to talk about the lineup? Do you remember anything from this game? Anything at all in this Fort Wayne Kalamazoo exhibition game, Gabby, from 1990?
September 29th, 1990. You know why I know that date?
Why?
Because my first wife left me September 28th on 1990. And I had phoned home that day, and I said, Mary, listen, I got the house and the apartment ready to come down. And she gave the pause, and I go, uh-oh, what's wrong? And so that happened. So I drove home. I didn't even play that game. Okay. I wanted to try to correct things in my life, but it didn't work out. But that's the day. September 29th was the day that I had gone home and missed that preseason game. But that's just that's a crazy byproduct. But I mean,
wow.
It also is John Anderson, who I played with in junior and played many years with the NHL. I had just talked him into coming to Fort Wayne. And the reason I talked him into it, I said, listen, you've had a rough time lately. I said, why don't you come down to Fort Wayne, play with me? We'll have a lot of fun this year. We'll live next door to each other. Everything will be great. And he had just come down, and I said, hey, I got to go. my wife's taking off on me. So, I mean, that ended up okay. The other thing is that, whether it was, and by the way, that year, you looked in the lineup, there's Lonnie Loach, John Anderson, and myself. Yep. And we were 1, 2, 3 in the league in scoring. Yeah, we were 1, 2, 3 in the league until John got hurt in March. And so he ended up about 8th, but Lonnie was first, I was second, and John was 8th. But it was a fabulous line. And a player on the other team, Kevin Evans, okay? He led, he had every record of penalty minute record going in there. And you have to know, I know their family so well, okay? Because when my first year pro, I played with Paul Evans, which was John's brother, or Kevin's brother. And so I was always up in Peterborough. But the thing with Kevin is when I finally got a job as a head coach in Mississippi, I figured, what do they need in Mississippi? They don't know hockey from bowling. And so we need a tough guy. We need personality. And I went and hired Kevin as my player assistant. And that year he had 505 minutes in penalties, because all they wanted to see was winning and fighting down there. That's all they would think. When they thought the words hockey in Mississippi in 1997, it was they don't know anything about the game or offsides, icings, didn't matter. But if we won the fights that night and we won the game, they were all pumped up and happy.
That's the Minnesota Fighting Saint in you coming out, Gabby. That's the WHA coming out in you. And by the way, Kevin Evans has a record in pro hockey that I don't think anyone believes will ever be beaten. You mentioned the 505, and that was 96-97, your Mississippi Seawolves. But if we go back to 86-87, again with Kalamazoo, Kevin Evans in 73 games, 648 penalty minutes for Kevin Evans. And it wasn't as if he was massive. I don't even think Kevin was 6 feet tall. But
No,
anything
5
that
foot
moved,
10, 175 pounds.
and he went after everybody, Gabby.
But excuse me, the thing that I knew when I went to Mississippi about marketing was, this is why I got him, was because it was about marketing. This is what they wanted to see. If I had gotten guys that were just great, smooth skaters, they wouldn't have appreciated it. But we got as many tough guys on that team as possible, and we had brawls all night long. And but the people loved it. We averaged 8,000 people a game in Mississippi when I was there.
There's an old saying: we're going to have to do something about all this fighting in the NHL and in pro hockey, or we're going to have to make bigger arenas. Gabby, you're the best. We'll talk again in 7 days here on The Hockey Lifers.